All right, Dalton, we ranked our top 10 quarterbacks in college football. We ranked our top 10 running backs in college football. Now it's time for our top 10 wide receivers in college football heading into the 2024 season. Kick us off, Dalton, with our number 10 receiver.
Number 10, we're staying in the group of five for a minute. Colorado State, we've got Torrey Horton. Now, Colorado State had a reputation in recent years for developing tight ends. Now we're getting a wide receiver in there. And Torrey Horton, it might sound weird, because he makes so much production on short passes. Already led the nation with 575 yards on short passes, second best short receiving grade in the country at 96.5. But he's blazing fast. He's got good size. He can do a little bit of everything. If they mix in the deep ball a little more with Torrey Horton, he tied Malik Nabers for the fastest top speed in the country among wide receivers last year, over 23 miles an hour. Horton, you know what, Colorado State, not a great team, but they run an air raid offense where they're going to get him a lot of volume like they did last year, at well over 1,000 yards last year. You've got a guy who, if they just diversify his arsenal a little bit and use him more on the deep ball, he could easily be a top 50 prospect in next year's draft with his size and speed.
Dude, 6'2" and runs over 23 miles per hour. That is all you need to know about Torrey Horton, man. He is an absolute freak. Staying in the group of five, Dalton, we only had one group of five player in our running backs list. We got two in our wide receivers list because at number 9 is Ricky White out of UNLV, formerly at Michigan State, and he was fantastic at UNLV this past season. Only Malik Nabers and Rome Odunze had more receiving yards this past year than Ricky White. Ricky White had 1,487 receiving yards, second also in the country with 3.83 yards per route run, and he led the country with almost a 35% target rate as well. So he was clearly UNLV's top option last year, and the Rebels really, really relied on him, and he once again returns to college football as one of the most, if not the most, productive group of five receiver right now. I really like Ricky White's game, man. I think he's one of the most underrated players in college football right now, and he checks in at number 9 on our list.
And number 8, we'll stay on the West Coast. We'll take it up to Eugene, Oregon, where they're looking to replace Troy Franklin. And I'll tell you what, they get a former five-star guy in Evan Stewart from Texas A&M. Now, Stewart struggled with injury last year, but he's an excellent route runner. He's still at a 73.7 receiving grade. He was off to a blazing start in his first couple of games, tore up Miami in week 2. If he just stays healthy, and in this offense, the way that they scheme receivers open, he's a fantastic route runner. We'll see what he's got for top-end speed and if he can recover from the injury, but he complements Tej Johnson in that offense really well, and he's the number 2 weapon right now for Dylan Gabriel. He's got huge potential in this offense, and he's shown his talent. 81.8 grade versus man coverage last season. Evan Stewart is, just like Dylan Gabriel, a perfect fit in Oregon's offense and should keep them and their offense in the top 10 this year.
Dalton, former 5-star recruit, too. I know you love that. So Evan Stewart, former top 10 recruit, Evan Stewart. We got another top 10 recruit in that class just later on in this list. But at number 7, a guy who actually recovered really well from injury that Evan Stewart's hoping to do this year, Alec Ayemaner from Stanford. He missed all of his freshman season in 2022 with a torn ACL, MCL, and meniscus. Came back this past year and was a breakout star for the Cardinal. 1,022 receiving yards, 5th among returning Power 5 receivers. He's a bigger target at 6'2". He had 14 contested catches, which were tied for 4th among Power 5 pass catchers as well. Also, you look at the quarterback situation, he might have had the worst one of anyone on this list. Stanford had a 57.7 passing grade, which is 112th in the country this past year. So he's making a lot of production on a team with bad quarterback play, too. If you really want to see what he's capable of, turn on the Colorado film, man. He dominated Colorado and dominated a potential top 5 pick in Travis Hunter. He didn't have any catches in the first half, but in the second half and overtime, he had 13 catches for 294 yards and 3 touchdowns. 7 of those catches were against Travis Hunter, and 2 of those touchdowns were against Travis Hunter as well. So no catches in the first half to a program record almost 300 yards in the second half and overtime. Truly an unbelievable game against Colorado in that game, Dalton, and checks in here at number 7 on this list, and hopefully he could do even more next year as a junior.
Let's take it down to the East Coast for number 6, Max. We'll go to Miami, and the best returning receiver in the ACC is Xavier Restrepo from Miami. He is as clean a projection as a slot receiver coming into this year as you could have, but he's also a deep threat. He's got a 99.9 deep grade, and you talk about a guy who's just a really savvy, high IQ route runner. 81.5 grade against man coverage, 81.4 against zone, 92 slot grade, which was fourth best in the country. Xavier Restrepo, I think for me, Max, this is becoming, the more I look at this list, the year of the slot receiver, and Restrepo's on the inner circle of that group. If Cam Ward is going to go down there and have success at Miami, Xavier Restrepo may lead the nation in targets this year. I wouldn't be shocked, but he's not the fastest guy in the world, but he finds a way to get open deep. He finds all the holes in zones. He does everything you could ask a slot receiver to do, and he's the best returning receiver in the ACC down in Coral Gables.
Yeah, absolutely. Xavier Restrepo has a big argument to be one of the best, maybe the best slot receiver in the country, although there's another guy this list will get into in a little bit that probably takes that crown. But at number 5 now, in the top 5 of our wide receivers heading into college football next year, is Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. So he transferred to Ole Miss from Louisiana Tech. Still had the 6th best receiving grade in the country this past year at 89.6, 3.17 yards per route run, 9th among all receivers in the country. Very difficult player to tackle at 6'2", 205 pounds, made some spectacular catches as well for the Rebels. He's a little bit of a limited athlete, doesn't really separate as well, but overall, I think he's really a good receiver all around. He can make some unbelievable catches, can break tackles as well, and he's going to be Ole Miss's top target for Jackson Dart next year, and should put up huge numbers for the Rebels, and what should be one of the most prolific passing attacks in college football.
Number 4, we're going to another guy. I tell you what, we're not going to get through, Max, many of these top 10s without a guy from Ohio State on it, and receiver is no exception. We're going to get Emeka Egbuka going at number 4 here. Down year in 2023, dealt with some injuries, dealt with some, not subpar, but just kind of diminished quarterback play from previous years. The big year he had in 2022, 1,150 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 84 receiving grade. Last year, that dipped a little bit. He just needs to get it going, get the chemistry going with Will Howard, right? And Ohio State and Egbuka has all the potential in the world. Last year, many thought of him as wide receiver 2 behind his teammate Marvin Harrison, right? All the talent is there, and you could even see last year there were times, right? He's still really good in the intermediate game. Put on the Notre Dame tape at the very end, caught 2 huge balls up the seam that were key to beating them. Egbuka's got all the talent in the world as a route runner. He's got solid speed, solid size. He just has to stay healthy. I think he's got to get the vertical game going a little more, but he's going to be a huge, huge key if Ohio State's making a national title run. And I think he can bounce back along with the incoming freshman Jeremiah Smith in that receiving core. The quicker he can find the chemistry with Will Howard, the better Ohio State's going to be. And we believe in Egbuka to find that potential again.
Oh, absolutely. And the Buckeyes could have maybe the best receiving duo in college football next year if Jeremiah Smith lives up to the hype immediately as a true freshman. But right now, Dalton, the best receiving duo in the country is in Eugene with Oregon, because at number 3 on our list, after already going over Evan Stewart, is Tez Johnson out of Oregon, formerly at Troy. And a really cool story about Tez Johnson, when we interviewed Bo Nix, who is his adopted brother, Bo said that Tez's dream was always to play for Oregon. He never got an offer from the Ducks, so he went to Troy, killed it at Troy, and then Bo went to Oregon, and Tez finally was able to go to Oregon as well. And it wasn't even like a nepotism thing of getting Bo's adopted brother. No. Tez Johnson, man, is one of the best receivers in college football, and he proved it this past year. So he's only 160 pounds, so he's a very, very light receiver. But he was still maybe the best receiver in the country with the ball in his hands. He led all Power 5 receivers this past year with 727 yards after the catch, and he had 278 receiving yards after contact, which were 5th among Power 5 receivers as well. 3.45 yards per route run, only behind Malik Neighbors among Power 5 pass catchers, and a 93.4% open target rate as well, which is in the 99th percentile of FBS receivers. So he gets open. When you get the ball in his hands, he's a really, really dangerous threat as a yak receiver. I think he and Dylan Gabriel, man, even though he loses his adopted brother at quarterback in Bo Nix, he and Dylan Gabriel should still be a lethal connection for Oregon next year. And Tez Johnson, in our opinion, is one of the top 3 receivers in college football.
Take it down to number 2 here, down to Arizona State on the West Coast. And I'll tell you what, Arizona's going to be in contention because they have Noah Fafita at quarterback and they have Tetsuo McMillan at wide receiver. And I've told you before, this might be my favorite player in the entire country. It almost hurts me to put him number 2 because it's really 1A and 1B with how good he is, and it's just what you prefer. But no, McMillan's got everything. He's 6'5", he's 205 to 210. He reminds me, the more I watch him, the more he reminds me of Mike Evans, or even I saw a comp earlier that comped him to Drake London. I think that's a fair one too. I think the size element, he runs better than you would think at that size. He is not a normal mover at 6'5". He can run in-breaking routes, horizontal routes, vertical routes. He can run anything. 96.5 receiving grade on 10-plus yard throws last year. 3rd in the Power 5 behind Malik Neighbors and Xavier Legette. That's it. You're talking about the best vertical receiver in the country right now. He gets downfield and reliable too. Only 2 drops on 130 targets.
Yep.
With a big time ADOT, 91.4 receiving grade against man coverage. This guy just wins downfield, and he got better as the year went on. His last 8 games, he was as good as any receiver in the country. And it coincided with Arizona winning. The first of that stretch was that, I believe it was double or triple overtime game. They lost to USC by 1 point. And after that, Arizona didn't lose another game. And Noah Fafita's development, Arizona's development all coincided with Tetairoa McMillan's development as a downfield winner. He's as dangerous as any college receiver in the game right now. By the end of this year, he could easily be number 1 on this list. I was vouching for him to be number 1 on this list, and it's so close just because the 2 guys at the top are very different. It's a different style of going about things, but McMillan, I don't think he could be any lower than 2. At number 2 feels fine for him, and he very well could be number 1 at the end of the year.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that, the last week we were talking about Tez Johnson, his quarterback last year was his adopted brother in Bo Nix. Tetairoa McMillan has a special relationship too with Noah Fafita. Noah Fafita and he have been playing together in middle school. They played together in high school, and now they're playing together at Arizona, and they're both killing it right now. But number 1, I don't think he has as special relationship with his quarterback as those other guys do, but it doesn't matter, man, because he's so dominant. It's Luther Burden III from Missouri. I compared him before to Deebo Samuel, and I think that's you see the size, 5'11", 208 pounds. Samuel's 6 feet tall, 215 pounds. And really the comparison works, in my opinion, because of how special Burden is with the ball in his hands as a yak receiver. He had 725 yards after the catch, 3rd among all receivers in the country, 314 receiving yards after contact, 4th most among all receivers in the country. Also, he's more than just a yak receiver, too. I think he gets kind of unfairly categorized that way. He could do more, man. He has only 4 drops this past year on 94 catchable targets, so really good hands. Also, he came down with over 56% of his contested targets this past year. He can go up and get it, man. So he's a really, really good all-around receiver. He was targeted on almost 33% of his receiving snaps, which is the highest rate in the Power 5 as well. So I agree with you. I think it's more of a 1A, 1B with Burden and McMillan. But as of right now, Luther Burden III is our number 1 receiver in college football entering the 2024 season.